Hey guys, welcome back to yet another reaction to my old videos. This one's important to me because as a new mother, my child is now, going on 4 months, and I have really failed along these lines over the years, and it has a huge detrimental effect to my mental well-being and state of mind, and for a lot of us, especially during this pandemic that is now going on, 3 years, aka the rest of eternity. um, Taking time and being ourselves for just a second is very, very huge. This weekend, my partner gave me the opportunity to just be me for a second. And I realized that I just needed to play a game or just be me for a second and not be doing laundry or dishes or thinking ahead of the next thing the baby would need, or just be me. And anyway, it's as true now as it was then.
Good evening, everyone. I am here this evening to drink tea and to remind each of you that as a person and as a girl or a woman, it is important to sit down about once a week for me, maybe less for you, maybe more, and just do something that is you, that is nothing to do with your significant other or your children or your job or your coworkers. It's just something that when you're completely alone, and if you've never lived alone, you don't know what that's like. I personally have to
That's a
drink tea.
key.
I usually
That's a key, actually. At this point in my life, I really had never lived alone. I'd always either lived with my family or I'd lived in my apartment for a period of time. But I think a week after I moved into my apartment, my cousin came to stay with me as a roommate, and then my brother did too. And then I moved north and I was living in a house with my brother and my father, etc. I had really never lived alone except for a brief period of time while I was in cooking school prior to moving to California. And I think I was there maybe 2 months, 3 months. That was a huge eye opener for me because I had never lived like no one else was watching. I never lived like I could do whatever I wanted, eat whatever I wanted, watch whatever I wanted, and nobody cared. So I had very limited experience. And when you don't have any experience with that and you've lived such a repressed and suppressed life up to that point, it can be difficult to know what is you.
pull out my calligraphy pens and do a little bit of writing. Sometimes I just read Mark Twain. It's just something that is completely me, and I would do it if nobody else was around. It's not something that I've learned to do because of someone else. So
This was a very big thing, especially because at this point in my life, even I still had never gotten to the place where who I was and what I believed in was specifically what I believed in and what I enjoyed doing, and wasn't affected by anyone else's opinion of it. Even still, what I did and what I enjoyed was colored by what I knew my family would approve of.
I wanted to bring that up because not only is it important for us as people, as individuals, I think it is especially important for me and for certain other people who might have grown up like I did. I spoke in a recent video about the Portuguese word that other blog brought up that I thought was very cool.
I need to find that video.
About the unrealistic expectation or the desire for something that doesn't exist. So I explained it as a point in time with a group of people in a particular location. That is what you're missing.
That's the TCK experience.
Well, this is how I go back there. I know it's not the same thing, and I know that some people think that it might actually be destructive versus helpful, but I've been doing this exercise for several years now, and I find that it's useful not to dwell in the past, but to take a moment every once in a while. For me, in the beginning, it was every day. And then for a while it was just once a month, and then sometimes I'll go back to once a week. And
So I'm talking about in the beginning. It was in the beginning of my re-entry to the United States. now, personally, I look at this and I say, yes, it's important to look back and remember. But for me, at this point, it's kind of more painful than it is helpful. So it's more like a trauma recovery exercise at this point. It's still important, but it's not nostalgic like it still was for me then.
You know, it just varies depending on how well you're handling all of the changes in your life and how stable you're feeling at that point in time. So I use this time as me time, but I also use it as an opportunity to think about the past. It sounds very morbid, I suppose, or like I'm trying not to face the future, but it's important for us to keep that past a part of us, because it is part of us. And especially for those of us who can't explain that to anyone, or give anyone a concrete idea of what it is that we're missing and why they found us bawling in the living room just now for no particular reason. It's just important to have that moment of recognition that it's there, and that it's going to affect you a little bit, less and less as time goes on. But for that purpose, I drink tea. Sometimes I follow little customs that I had overseas that are obsolete here. We didn't have a lot of things like peanut butter or chocolate bars or anything like that, partly just because we were too poor to purchase them, not because they weren't available. But
Oh, peanut butter
so I
wasn't.
used to make powdered milk, and it was better if you heated it up anyway. So we'd heat it up and it'd be hot milk.
I just have to say this because I know my significant other watches these videos, and he's probably listening to this one at work. And he cannot fathom my love of powdered milk. I still keep a can in the cupboard because, one, it's emergency food, and two, nostalgia. And as long as you cook it over on the stove and heat it through, it tastes, I don't know, I've lost a little bit of my taste for it, but it's still emergency. The key, though, is I came back to the United States and I went looking for powdered milk that I had grown up on in a can, whole fat powdered milk. And all I could find was this sad excuse for powdered milk that was fat-free and disgusting. And I was so disappointed. And I discovered that Americans thought that powdered milk always tasted disgusting because fat-free powdered milk does taste disgusting. But one day I found it in Kroger in the baby aisle. It was Nido. It's a brand that I never used overseas. We always had Parmalat or something like that. Speaking of which, I do buy the shelf-stable Parmalat in the little cartons sometimes just as backup. But the Nido, full fat, that's where it's at.
And you would beat it up with a whisk, make it all frothy, and then for the treat you could add pieces of the chocolate bars. It was basically baking chocolate, like that's what we called our chocolate bars, and it was so good. Can't find anything like that up here. And you just let it sit in the milk and just kind of melt into a great big glob on the bottom of your cup. This is very healthy. It was very good for when I needed chocolate. Also, we didn't have Reese's, but I had peanuts. So I would get a bowl of peanuts and my milk with my secret chocolate melted in the bottom. And then you dig the chocolate out through the milk with a spoon and eat it with the peanuts. Best dessert ever. I've never been able to recreate it here in the United States, probably because I don't have powdered milk or that particular chocolate bar. Maybe it was just because it was that much more wonderful there. But little customs, little things. Look at pictures if you've got them. Just take a few minutes to live in that place with those people at that time and just recognize that it's gone, but it did exist, and you're not crazy, and it's okay to cry sometimes.
I just want to say that this is a huge shout out to the TCK experience, which we've discussed, third culture kid experience, where you miss it so much and you have so many rosy memories of it. And I have to say, I'm not sure if my trauma recovery has compromised my rosy memories, but I feel like it has, because I look back now and there are rosy memories, but a lot of them are actually shadowed by the true representation in my memory now, as I've recognized what actually was happening and what I was really dealing with, and how the rosiness, it was more an indication of me living in my imagined reality that was much happier and prettier, because that was how I survived. So there's a lot to be said for looking back and remembering and relaxing and being yourself, but that's not so much me anymore. And I think that's actually a good indication of growth and progress, is that now when I decide that I want to be me for a minute, it's me playing a game for literally 5 minutes. It's me just not thinking about any of my responsibilities for 5 minutes. It's very different than it used to be when I made this video.
It's okay to cry a lot of times.
That's true.
It's necessary. Just try not to do it in the middle of the bus.
I did do that.
They didn't take very kindly to that. I was in the middle of LA. That might have been part of the problem. Anyway, cheers.
So yeah, LA doesn't take kindly to emotional displays on the bus. They tend to assume that you're crazy or nuts, which is the same thing. Anyway, I've also learned since then that a lot of the reasons that I was crying was that I had a lot of emotional baggage that I needed to address. And the only way that felt okay for me to express emotion was if I was feeling nostalgic. That was an okay expression. And so I used that often. And also I just really missed the old life, because this new American existence was very confusing and frustrating for me at the time. And that was 10 years in. So can you imagine how long it took me to get to this place? Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I'm going to probably do a couple of more videos on reactions, and then I might actually start making new videos instead of, you know, riding on the heels of my old content. But it's interesting to look at these and recognize where I was and where I'm now, and see the progress. For me, that's key. So anyway, if you're a third culture kid or you're in trauma recovery, this is the place to hear me talk about my issues. We don't do gaming so much on this channel anymore, but this is how it started, with these little blips on my little iPod that I made when I was in California. So we're going to revisit them for a minute. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.